Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. Our stories today. The White House condemns the recent violence in LA, saying it's an attack on American culture and society. Press Secretary Leavitt reiterates President Trump's policy to remove illegal immigrants from the city. The Department of Justice charges 2 men for allegedly possessing Molotov cocktails during recent civil unrest in downtown Los Angeles. 2 others face charges for allegedly assaulting a federal officer. A federal appeals court in New York heard arguments today in President Trump's bid to erase his criminal conviction. Tech billionaire Elon Musk said he regrets recent posts about President Trump, saying they went too far. So where does their relationship stand now? And Austria is dealing with the aftermath of what appears to be the deadliest attack since the Second World War. What do we know about the gunman of yesterday's shooting and how the U.S. is responding?
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. In the White House press briefing just now, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt repeated that President Trump is committed to preserving law and order and protecting lawful citizens from others. She says the arresting of criminal illegal immigrants continues.
President Trump will never allow mob rule to prevail in America. The most basic duty of government is to preserve law and order, and this administration embraces that sacred responsibility. Democrats like Governor Gavin Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass shamefully failed to meet their sworn obligations to their citizens. They didn't have the courage to do the right thing and protect law-abiding Californians from rioters. That's why President Trump deployed the National Guard and mobilized Marines to end the chaos and restore law and order. The mob violence is being stomped out. The criminals responsible will be swiftly brought to justice. And the Trump administration's operations to arrest illegal aliens are continuing unabated. Just take a look at some of the illegal monsters who were taken off the streets in Los Angeles in recent days. A Vietnamese national, a known gang member with a conviction for second-degree murder. A Mexican national with convictions for child molestation who was armed with a dangerous weapon and had previous arrests for robbery and domestic violence. A Filipino national with convictions of rape, assault, burglary, and theft. A Mexican national convicted of statutory rape, narcotics violations, and hit and run. A Nicaraguan national with convictions for domestic violence and hit and run, and a previous arrest for willful cruelty to a child. And an illegal alien from Mexico who was arrested after allegedly throwing a Molotov cocktail at law enforcement officers during the Paramount riots on Saturday. He is now being charged with attempted murder. Law-abiding American citizens do not want these public safety threats living in their communities.
Leavitt also touched on the U.S.-China trade deal that was just reached after talks in London. She said China agreed to adhere to the Geneva Agreement terms for releasing critical minerals and magnets.
He spoke to his trade team, who did a fantastic job negotiating this on behalf of the United States and meeting with their Chinese counterparts. The president is talking to them about the details of it now. But what the president heard, he liked. China has agreed to open their markets to the United States separately of this deal. And when it comes to this deal, we're going back to the terms that were agreed upon in Geneva for the release of some of those critical minerals and the magnets from China to the United States. And we have agreed to fully comply with the Geneva Agreement as well. So the president is reviewing the details of that with his trade team now, and you'll hear more from him, I'm sure.
Meanwhile, circulating online videos show multiple stores in downtown LA being looted Monday night, with windows smashed at the Apple and Adidas stores and merchandise stolen. Attorney General Pam Bondi addressed the issue this morning.
Well, sure. Right now, it's keeping California safe. If Gavin Newsom isn't going to keep California safe, we are. You know, they imposed a curfew last night. I think that helped a bit. But today, we wanted them to declare, they didn't declare an economic disaster out there with all of the businesses. Had they done that, Kelly Loeffler and the Small Business Association could have come in and helped, given federal aid to all of these businesses in California. We've been seeing on the news all of these drugstores getting robbed, getting looted. The Apple store just got raided. I mean, we're all watching this live on the news. And this isn't just looting to me. You think people just run in and take something, leave, and nothing happens? We're using the Hobbs Act. We are charging robbery to protect Californians under this. If you loot a store, we are going to charge you with robbery under the Hobbs Act, and you're looking at maximum 20 years in prison. But we're going to prosecute you for that. Right now in California, what we're doing is working by bringing in the National Guard, by bringing in the Marines right now to back them up, to protect our federal buildings, to protect the highways, to protect the citizens. So right now in California, we're at a good point. We're not scared to go further. We're not frightened to do something else if we need to.
The Department of Justice is prosecuting 2 individuals accused of possessing Molotov cocktails amid ongoing civil unrest in Los Angeles. The U.S. Attorney for the Central District of California detailed the charges today.
The defendants charged in the complaints are accused of throwing Molotov cocktails at police officers and sheriff deputies who were called in to restore order after 2 demonstrations against federal immigration enforcement turned violent. As alleged in the complaints, these defendants, one in Paramount, the other in downtown Los Angeles, threw Molotov cocktails at police officers. Last Saturday, one defendant, Emiliano Galvez, hid behind a fence and threw the destructive device at a sheriff's deputy, then ran away. Deputies gave chase and arrested him. That's the video you actually see playing right there. The following day, a police officer apprehended the other defendant, Rocky Quigui, after spotting him with a Molotov cocktail in his hand. Officers witnessed him throw the device in the air and then arrested him with a lighter in his right hand. I commend our prosecutors and our law enforcement partners for swiftly taking action against these individuals. Our community must be kept safe for peaceful protests and against thugs and criminals looking to start trouble. We expect more charges to be filed in the coming days and weeks. If you took part in these riots and were looking to cause trouble, we will come looking for you.
The DOJ also charged 2 men accused of assaulting a federal officer at recent rallies in Santa Ana. Police arrested more than 20 people on the first night of curfew in downtown Los Angeles. Officers used crowd control projectiles to break up hundreds of protesters demonstrating against President Trump's illegal immigration crackdown. Some 2,000 National Guard soldiers are in the city, and about half of them have been protecting federal buildings and agents. The total number of U.S. military personnel mobilized in the Los Angeles area has grown to more than 4,000. Commander of Task Force 51, Major General Scott Sherman, is overseeing the operation.
So with our orders directed by the President, the Secretary of Defense has mobilized. Right now it's 4,700 personnel, so 4,000 from the California National Guard, 700 Marines. And our mission is to protect federal agencies, our federal partners, their personnel as they conduct their federal mission. So strictly for the protection of the federal personnel and the protection of the federal building, they're allowed to temporarily detain and wait for law enforcement to come and arrest them. They do not do any arrest. They're strictly there to detain, to wait for law enforcement to come and handle those demonstrators.
Sherman said the Marines are trained to use their weapons for personal protection, but the rifles would not be loaded with live ammunition during the deployment. The general added that the Marines are taking a 2-day training course on how to handle civil disturbances. The deployment is the first time in decades that a state's National Guard has been activated without a request from its governor. California's Attorney General has filed a lawsuit challenging their presence. Now, Los Angeles isn't the only city seeing unrest. Protests have erupted in other cities, including Philadelphia, San Francisco, Seattle, and Chicago. Footage are showing demonstrators gathering in Atlanta, Washington, D.C., and New York, calling for unity in support of immigrants. In Austin, Texas, protesters gathered outside a federal building. Police say some individuals threw rocks, tossed scooters and barricades into roads. Multiple arrests were made and 4 officers were injured. In Chicago, crowds flooded the streets and several confrontations were reported between demonstrators and police. Activists say more and larger demonstrations are planned nationwide this weekend. Counter-protests also occurred. In Los Angeles, one man wearing a red "Make America Great Again" hat exchanged heated words with protesters. Texas Governor Greg Abbott says the Texas National Guard will be deployed across the state to ensure law and order. Abbott says peaceful protest is legal, but harming people or property is not and will lead to arrest. The governor says National Guardsmen will use every tool and strategy to help law enforcement maintain order. The U.S. and China have struck a deal on trade at talks in London. President Trump confirmed today that the deal with China is done. He said on Truth Social that Beijing will supply magnets and rare earth minerals to the U.S. In return, the U.S. will allow Chinese students to attend American colleges and universities. He added, quote, "We are getting a total of 55% tariffs. China is getting 10%. Trump said the deal is subject to final approval by him and China's Communist Party leader Xi Jinping. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick spoke early this morning after 2 days of intense negotiations.
So the idea is we're going to go back and speak to President Trump and make sure he approves it. They're going to go back and speak to President Xi and make sure he approves it. And if that is approved, we will then implement the framework that we have worked hard over these last 2 days.
Lutnick said the new agreement put meat on the bones of the Geneva deal that had faltered over China's curbs on the export of critical rare earth minerals. Now Lutnick says those restrictions will be removed as a fundamental part of the new framework. He said that some recent US export restrictions would also be lifted. Chinese Vice Commerce Minister Li Chenggang also spoke to reporters. He confirmed that agreement had been reached and said both sides would now report back to national leaders. Markets gave the news a cautious welcome, with Asian stocks posting modest gains in Wednesday trade.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent testified before the House Ways and Means Committee today. Bessent urged China to keep its promises from a recent trade deal made in Geneva. This came just hours after both sides agreed on a new plan to carry out the agreement.
Dozens of countries have engaged the administration thus far with offers to improve their trade relations with the United States. This includes China. I have just returned in the middle of last night from successful negotiations in London with a Chinese delegation that will not only stabilize the economic relationship between our two economies, but make it more balanced. China has a singular opportunity to stabilize its economy by shifting away from excess production towards greater consumption. But the country needs to be a reliable partner in trade negotiations. If China will course correct by upholding its end of the initial trade agreement we outlined in Geneva, and I believe after our talks in London they will, then the rebalancing of the world's two largest economies is possible.
Bessent said China has a singular opportunity to stabilize its economy by shifting away from excess manufacturing production for export to greater domestic consumption. Bessent's testimony did not share details about the deal made with China after 2 days of talks in London. He left the talks early to return to Washington for the House hearing. And a victory for the Trump administration's tariff plan, at least for now, that is. A federal appeals court ruled yesterday the government can keep many of its tariffs on China and other countries while legal challenges play out. The appeals court said the case raised issues of exceptional importance. The court is therefore taking the rare step of having the 11-member court hear the appeal instead of it going before a 3-panel judge first. It scheduled arguments for late July. The Court of International Trade ruled last month the president exceeded his authority to impose tariffs after he claimed a national emergency. The Trump administration appealed, leading to yesterday's ruling. Now, inflation rose slightly last month as the cost of groceries ticked higher. This suggests that prices and increases may be returning as global tariffs affect the global economy. A Labor Department report released today said that consumer prices increased 2.4% in May compared with a year ago. That is up from 2.3% yearly increase in April. Grocery prices rose 0.3% from April to May. They have gone up 2.2% in the past year. Fruits and vegetables, breakfast, cereals, and frozen foods all rose in price. Egg costs fell 2.7%. It's their second straight drop, though they are still more than 40% more expensive than a year ago. President Trump said today, repeated his view that the Federal Reserve should cut interest rates by 1 percentage point. He said the latest inflation figures were great. And joining us now to discuss the inflation report is Jason Sorens, Senior Research Fellow at American Institute for Economic Research. Good afternoon, Jason. So inflation ticked up to 2.4%, slightly below estimates. Can you give us what stood out to you in this report?
Yeah, so that was 2.4% over the last year. But if you look at the month-to-month inflation rate, it was just 0.1%. So on an annualized basis, about 1.2%. So really, inflation has been at or below the Fed's target of 2% for the last 3 months. And in fact, CPI slightly overstates inflation. So if you look at the Fed's preferred measure, PCE inflation, you would expect that to come in even slightly lower than that. So overall, this is a cool inflation reading. It makes it more likely that the Fed will cut interest rates, not at this meeting, but possibly the next one or the one after, and market expectations of that have risen.
To what extent do you think, Jason, are President Trump's tariffs feeding into consumer prices?
Not much yet. And in fact, most of the tariffs, of course, have not gone into effect or have been suspended. But we may be seeing them already in groceries because these are perishable goods. That is the first place we would expect to see some tariffs show up. And so we did see that 0.3% monthly inflation reading on groceries, which is a little high. But overall, goods, including automobiles and consumer durables, actually fell in price over May. And most of the inflation came from services. So really, tariffs have not shown up in the inflation data yet.
You know, Jason, I know some companies at least are holding off on price hikes. Why do you think that is? Do they still have plenty of inventory, or because of competition? Or maybe they're worried that the consumer might just go somewhere else? What is the answer?
Yeah, so companies built up inventories as these tariffs were being announced. And so they quickly onshored a bunch of goods in March and April. And as a result, they are selling down their inventories now. And for that reason, they don't need to raise prices yet. And again, for most goods, for most countries, that rate is now 10%, which is a little higher than it used to be, but is certainly much lower than some of the extremes that have been announced on April 2nd.
Well, I would imagine their inventory is limited, right? I mean, will tariffs push inflation back up if businesses start to pass on the costs?
It's likely that we will see some growth in inflation as a result of tariffs, especially if some of the higher tariffs come back into force. Remember, they're only suspended for 90 days, and we've got something like 50 more days of that left. So it's certainly possible that these numbers will show up in inflation. Now, you would expect tariffs mostly to affect relative prices rather than the price level. By that, I mean that the tariffs will raise the cost of goods that can be traded, right? So food, manufactured goods, that is where you should expect inflation to show up. But you wouldn't expect it to show up in services, education, healthcare, restaurants, food service. In most economist models, tariffs don't affect the overall inflation rate unless they decrease the productivity of the whole economy. And that is certainly possible because remember that tariffs are hitting business inputs as well. So they're hitting steel, aluminum, for example. They're hitting things that are used in business production that could make businesses less productive, and that would cause inflation to go up. But you should expect it first to hit those tradable goods sectors like food, agricultural products, and manufactured goods.
Okay, so during this inflation battle with the Fed, you probably heard of the statement that the Fed is usually behind the curve, right? And Trump has called the Fed to cut interest rates 1 percentage point. Do you think the central bank should do that?
Well, I think it's probably not helpful for the president to be calling for it because, if anything, that may make the Fed more resistant to changing whatever course it's on because it doesn't want to seem as if it's responding to political pressure. But I do think that increasingly we're seeing that inflation is cool and that monetary policy is tight compared to where it needs to be. So I do think President Trump actually has a little bit of an argument here that the Fed needs to start thinking about cutting rates. They probably want to see another month of low inflation readings before they start to do that. And right now, the market does not expect them to cut until September, but there is a very high likelihood that they'll cut by 25 basis points by September.
Okay, by your estimate, how likely is it that do you think the Fed will meet its dual mandate in the current environment?
It's tough because if you see tariffs push up inflation at the same time that the labor market is cooling, that makes it really difficult for the Fed to keep unemployment low and keep inflation at 2%. What you might see is that the Fed continues to cut rates, returns to cutting rates, even if inflation is slightly above its target, under the idea that it will come back down, that it could be a temporary inflation if it's just being caused by tariffs. And so as a result, especially if the labor market looks soft, we may see a little bit more inflation as we get into summer and early fall.
All right, I'll just ask you one more thing before we go here. Are we going to see an environment where inflation is still above target, but economically speaking, it's not so healthy? There's weakness in the economy?
Well, of course, stagflation can happen, right? Where you have both high inflation and unemployment or slow growth. And we had that in the 1970s. And typically that happens when you have what's called an adverse productivity shock, right? If something hurts the productivity of the U.S. economy in the 1970s, you had oil shocks. Right now, you've got tariffs. That certainly does risk the possibility that you could have even a recession along with high inflation, and that would be obviously hugely negative for the American worker and the American consumer. But at the same time, I think there are some real strengths in the U.S. economy right now. We have significant productivity growth in the information sector, in artificial intelligence, in things like automated cars, and I think what we're going to see here is that if we can get policy back on track to low tariffs, deregulation, tax cuts, and smaller federal government spending, then we'll see the productivity of the American economy pick up, and we'll see positive growth and low inflation.
Well, all right, Jason, good to talk to you today. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up, a federal appeals court in New York heard arguments today in President Trump's bid to erase his criminal conviction. That and more after the break.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, I have an important message about security. Write down the number on your screen so you can call when I finish. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. This is a lock for your life insurance, a rate lock that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. But be careful. Many policies you see do not have one. But you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. Call this number to learn more. This plan was designed with a rate lock for people on a fixed income who want life insurance that fits their budget and is simple to get. Coverage options start at $9.95 a month, less than 35 cents a day. Act now, and your rate will be locked in for life. It will never increase, guaranteed. This is lifelong coverage that can never be canceled as long as you pay your premiums, guaranteed. And your acceptance is guaranteed, with no health questions. You cannot be turned down because of your health. Call for your information kit and read about this rate lock for yourself. You'll also get a free beneficiary planner. Both are free with no obligation. Don't miss out. Call for information, then decide. Read about the 30-day 100% money-back guarantee. Don't wait. Call this number now.
Call now and you'll also get this free beneficiary planner. Use this valuable guide to record important information and your final wishes, and it's yours free just for calling. So don't wait. Call 1-800-357-4821 for your free information. That's 1-800-357-4821. There's no risk or obligation. That number again is 1-800-357-4821. That's 1-800-357-4821. 1-800-357-4821. Call now.
I was a quarterback at Hardaway High School. College first-round draft pick, on and off the field. We were taught to not show any signs of weakness. During the football season, I would stop eating. But I didn't know I was depressed. I thought that something was wrong with me. For 20-plus years was physical. We didn't have any education behind what mental health was. I started to learn it starts here first. If this is together, I'll be better as a father, as a man, and as a husband. Put the importance on your mental health. I'm not scared to talk about it anymore. The first tool is therapy. The second one is positive self-talk. And then journaling, putting your thoughts on paper. We have to redefine what being a strong man is and heal, love your mind.
An appeals court today heard arguments over whether President Trump's New York criminal conviction should be moved to federal court. Arguments revived in President Trump's New York criminal conviction. A federal court of appeals heard oral arguments Wednesday on whether the president's appeal of his conviction should be transferred to federal court. Trump was convicted in May 2024 of 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. The jury decided the payments were intended to cover an adult movie actress's allegation that they had an affair. Some of the payments were made while he was the 45th president. Trump denies her claim and said he did nothing wrong. His attorney argued to the three-judge panel that the case should have never been tried in state court because they say some of the evidence presented to the jury involved Trump's conduct as the 45th president. They want the Second Circuit to determine once and for all that cases against the former and current president should be heard in federal courts. If the federal court takes control of the criminal case, it would ultimately decide Trump's appeal of the verdict, which is now pending in a state appellate court. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office, which prosecuted Trump's case, wants it to stay in state court. They argue that the conviction involves his personal life, not his work as president, and that the payment at issue were private, unofficial acts and thus unrelated to his duties as president. If Trump loses, he could go to the U.S. Supreme Court. Elon Musk steps back from his recent feud with President Trump. He said on X that he regrets some of his posts about Trump. Musk wrote on his social media platform X, quote, "I regret some of my posts about President Donald Trump last week. They went too far." He did not say which specific posts he was talking about, though he has deleted several that were critical of Trump. One of those posts signaled support for impeaching the president. Musk's relationship with Trump deteriorated in public fashion last week as the two men traded jabs on social media. Musk slammed Trump's tax and domestic policy bill, labeling it a disgusting abomination. In a phone conversation with New York Post, Trump commented on Musk's apology. He said, quote, "I thought it was very nice that he did that." Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents raided a meat production plant in Omaha, Nebraska yesterday. The Homeland Security Department described it as the largest worksite enforcement operation in the state since President Trump took office in January. The raid happened at around 9 a.m. at a Glen Valley Foods plant. DHS said in a statement on X that, quote, an illegal alien from Honduras threatened federal officers and agents with a box cutter. ICE enforcement officers and agents were conducting an operation at the time. ICE officers and agents are facing a 413% increase in assaults against them. No ICE law enforcement was hurt in this operation. The department did not say how many individuals were targeted during the raid. The food packaging company said it was surprised by the raid and had received no notice ahead of time. It added that it had followed the rules regarding immigration status. A fashion influencer who regularly criticizes the president's wardrobe and the administration's policies admits he is in the U.S. illegally. He wrote a long post on social media explaining his journey of immigration. Guy is an editor at fashion blog Put This On and runs a Ralph Lauren fan account on X. He also has posts on his personal X account criticizing the Trump administration's immigration actions. His June 8th post has been seen almost 5 million times on X. In it, Guy explained that his family escaped Vietnam into Canada and crossed the border illegally into the U.S. The Department of Homeland Security responded to Guy's post with an image that seems to indicate it is taking notice. The vice president has also been a target of Guy's fashion criticism and responded to the online discussion with another image that seems to indicate he is in agreement with deporting Guy. Lawmakers in the House last night passed two D.C.-related bills. They repeal local laws that address policing and voting. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has more on last night's votes.
On a bipartisan basis Tuesday night, House lawmakers passed a bill to restrict non-citizens from voting in Washington, D.C., repealing a 2022 law that was created by the D.C. City Council, allowing non-citizens to vote only in D.C.'s local elections. Although it only applies to local elections, Republicans still say this is unconstitutional and plan to take state-by-state action to stop it. 56 Democrats agreed with Republicans on this bill last evening, though a number of Democrats opposed it, arguing that votes like this would cause voter intimidation, as well as making the point that voting for non-citizens in local elections is not uncommon across the states.
Regardless of your views on the merits of non-citizen voting for local elections, we have to acknowledge that D.C. is not the first, nor are they the only jurisdiction in our country to allow this.
And so just like we fought this in New York City and we prevailed, we will do the same here in Washington, D.C., and make sure that they stop allowing and they don't allow non-citizens to vote in their municipal elections.
Now, this bill already passed the House and the Senate during last Congress, but President Biden vetoed it. This time around, if it does make it through the Senate, it's sure to be signed by President Trump. In addition to this non-citizen voting bill, House lawmakers also voted on a separate bill to address the police force here in Washington, D.C. It would reinstate D.C. police rights to collectively bargain over disciplinary matters and reinstate clear timelines for disciplinary investigations. 30 Democrats joined with Republicans on this piece of legislation. Now, this all comes at a time when D.C. officials are urging lawmakers to take action to address their budget shortfall. So back when lawmakers passed a bill to avert a government shutdown in March, it caused D.C. to revert back to 2024 spending levels, leaving them with a $1 billion budget shortfall. The Senate has taken action to address that budget shortfall, and President Trump endorses taking such action, although House Speaker Mike Johnson has not yet brought it up to the floor for a vote, instead saying that his top priority is to get the GOP's big budget bill across the finish line. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
And in New Jersey, the race for governor is set. Democrat Mikey Sherrill and Republican Jack Ciattarelli will face off in November after winning their party primaries yesterday. Ciattarelli, backed by President Trump, cruised to victory with more than 65% of the GOP vote. Sherrill topped a crowded Democratic field with around 34%. This marks the first election since New Jersey scrapped its controversial county line ballot system. The race is wide open, with Democratic Governor Phil Murphy term limited after narrowly defeating Chattarelli in 2021. Top issues include transit, taxes, and the state's high cost of living. The general election is set for November 4th. More than 100 children have been rescued after a month-long investigation in Texas. The operation snared over 240 alleged online child sex predators. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the case, which the FBI and other agencies announced yesterday in Dallas.
Operation Soteria Shield was launched in April and led to the rescue of 109 children.
Soteria, the name of the operation, is derived from Greek mythology, and it represents safety, deliverance, and preservation of harm.
FBI Director Kash Patel called it a huge takedown of child abusers in Texas. FBI agent Joseph Rothrock says a common goal, to rescue children from abuse, united more than 70 federal, state, and local agencies.
Let the message be clear. If you exploit children, we will find you and we will bring you to justice.
The operation took 244 men and women accused of exploiting children for sex trafficking or pornography off the streets.
We worked hard on this investigation to make sure that these heinous acts and those committing them are brought to justice.
Plano Police Department Assistant Chief Dan Curtis says many of the children recognized or rescued were previously unidentified.
They'd never been reported missing. They had never had their abuse known to authorities.
Curtis says without this kind of proactive operation, they might have continued to stay in the shadows, being exploited and victimized.
Imagine being a child whose image has been shared online over and over, wondering who's seen it. Then imagine the relief of knowing the person that hurt you has been arrested and the images are now being removed.
Internet Crimes Against Children Bureau Commander Tina Schwartz says 109 children now have a chance to heal, be safe, and frankly, just be a child.
At the core of this mission is an unwavering resolve to confront the crisis head on, to ensure that every victim gets the justice they deserve, and to make certain that those who prey on our children can no longer hide in the shadows.
The FBI says the investigation also gathered terabytes of illicit data, with electronic devices being further analyzed. The new evidence could lead to additional arrests or identifying victims. This marks the second month in a row that the FBI has announced large-scale arrests of alleged online predators. 205 suspects were arrested in a nationwide sweep called Operation Restore Justice just last month. FBI Director Kash Patel says such cases are high priority for President Trump's Justice Department. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said yesterday that new Centers for Disease Control and Prevention vaccine panel members will be announced in the coming days. He has ordered the removal of all 17 members of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. Kennedy said on social media platform X that the new members will not include people who strongly oppose vaccines. He said the new members will be highly credentialed physicians and scientists. They will make important public health decisions using evidence, objectivity, and common sense. Senator Bill Cassidy raised concerns after Kennedy removed the members of the advisory panel. He said on X that he feared the new members would be people who know nothing about vaccines except suspicion. He added, "I've just spoken with Secretary Kennedy, and I'll continue to talk with him to ensure this is not the case." The president of the American Medical Association criticized the decision, saying the removal of all 17 members undermines trust and upends a transparent process that has saved countless lives. Coming up, prospects for a U.S.-Iran nuclear deal could be fading. President Trump says he's losing confidence in Tehran's willingness to limit uranium enrichment. That and more after the break.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
I had a pretty normal mom life. Everything was pretty good, and it was a very happy life.
And we just had a new baby. And then all of a sudden, within a day or two, she's on life support and fighting for her life.
And I knew something was pretty wrong. A little less than a week after I came home, I couldn't breathe. That's when we decided to go to the hospital. I was given the diagnosis that I had peripartum cardiomyopathy, which is basically a pregnancy-induced heart failure. They told me my only chance was a heart transplant.
And the American Heart Association helped make that possible. Their research helped save me.
This could not happen without monthly donations from friends like you. Your sustained support helps fund life-saving research that leads to medical breakthroughs, like those that gave Jen a second chance at life. Heart disease is the #1 killer in America, and we urgently need your help to save lives. Go to helpheart.org or call now to become a monthly donor today. Your donation of only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, will make a difference through prevention, early detection, treatments, and cures that help save lives.
I am very thankful for the American Heart Association. I'm grateful for just every day that I get with my children.
Please go to helpheart.org or call now with your donation of just $19 a month. Join our community of monthly donors, and you'll get this limited edition t-shirt you could wear to show you're helping save lives.
One simple act today can save your life or the life of a loved one.
Please call or go online to helpheart.org. Become a monthly donor, and for a limited time only, your first month's gift will be matched.
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretang Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
President Trump is now reviewing the details of a trade framework between the U.S. and China, as his final approval for a potential deal is still pending. The White House also doubles down on President Trump's move to send troops to Los Angeles, vowing to restore order while protecting First Amendment rights. Joining us now live is NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao. Good afternoon, Iris. What's the latest from the press briefing this afternoon?
Violent criminals. Good afternoon to you as well, Dawn. So during the press briefing, the White House press secretary told us that President Trump, who has already talked to his trade team after they finished talking with China for the past 2 days in London, and President liked what he heard so far and is currently reviewing the details of a framework established between the two countries, which includes China releasing critical minerals to the U.S.
The president is talking to them about the details of it now, but what the president heard, he liked. China has agreed to open their markets to the United States separately of this deal, and when it comes to this deal, we're going back to the terms that were agreed upon in Geneva for the release of some of those critical minerals and the magnets from China to the United States.
After President Trump's call with China's Xi Jinping, as well as a few days of talks in London between the trade teams of both countries, President Trump announced this morning on Truth Social that a deal with China is, quote, done and subject to final approval by Xi Jinping and himself. He says that as part of the framework established, China will agree to supply the U.S. upfront with critical minerals, including full magnets. The U.S. in return will provide China what has agreed to in the trade agreement, including, for example, access for Chinese students to U.S. universities. On tariffs, Trump says the U.S. will impose a 55% tariff on China, while China will impose a 10% tariff on U.S. goods.
And Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent today, meanwhile, after coming back from those trade talks, it says that China needs to course correct and become a reliable partner in trade negotiations. Remember that President Trump just about a week or so ago said that China has totally violated the trade agreement agreed to with the U.S. in Geneva by not allowing rare earth minerals to be flown to the U.S. with less restrictions. So it remains to be seen, though, if China this time around will keep their word. Back to you.
And Iris, switching gears a little bit here. So riots and protests from Los Angeles has spread to other U.S. cities in recent days, with dozens of arrests Tuesday. What's the White House saying about that?
Right, so protests now have spread beyond just Los Angeles and now have gone to cities like Chicago, New York, even in Texas. And Texas Governor Greg Abbott has said that he will activate the National Guard to respond to the protests in his state. The White House press secretary today, meanwhile, sending a stern warning to protesters in other parts of the country and saying that any lawlessness would only strengthen the administration's resolve to respond. Watch.
And let this be an unequivocal message to left-wing radicals in other parts of the country who are thinking about copycatting the violence in an effort to stop this administration's mass deportation efforts. You will not succeed. Any lawlessness will only strengthen this president's resolve to defend the majority of Americans who want to live their lives peacefully, free from the fear of violent, criminal, illegal aliens.
President Trump has deployed hundreds of active duty Marines as well as around 4,000 National Guard troops to Los Angeles, and that's despite pushback from Democratic leaders such as, for example, California Governor Gavin Newsom, who has sued the Trump administration, accusing it of overreach. Chicago Mayor today also called Trump a, quote, authoritarian, accusing the administration of trying to, quote, repress all protests. The White House, meanwhile, today, though, pushing back, saying that President Trump apparently supports peaceful protests, though condemn violent ones. Watch.
The president absolutely supports peaceful protests. He supports the First Amendment. He supports the right of Americans to make their voices heard. He does not support violence of any kind. He does not support assaulting law enforcement officers.
So if there were peaceful protests on Saturday for the military parade, President Trump would allow that?
Of course the president supports peaceful protests. What a stupid question.
And the White House today said that they have now arrested nearly 400 illegal immigrants since the protests in Los Angeles turned violent last Friday. Among them, there were criminals, including those who have criminal histories like rape as well as burglary. Meanwhile, the president, though, says that if protests spread to this weekend's military parade right here in Washington, D.C., they will be met with, quote, heavy force. Back to you.
All right, Iris, thank you. Turning to the Middle East, President Trump says he is less confident that Iran will agree to stop uranium enrichment in a nuclear deal. Trump made the comments in a Pod Force One podcast recorded on Monday and released today. The president has been seeking a new nuclear deal to place limits on Iran's nuclear activities. He has threatened Iran or Tehran with bombing if no agreement is reached. Trump says the Iranians seem to be using delaying tactics. Trump repeated that the U.S. would not allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon, whether or not a deal is reached. Meanwhile, Iran's defense minister said today that if conflict arises with the United States, Iran will strike American bases in the region. And House Speaker Mike Johnson will head to Israel soon. Johnson said today he will address the Israeli parliament on June 22nd. Johnson said that the ties of the U.S. and Israel run deeper than military partnerships and trade agreements, and called the address one of the highest honors of his life. Meanwhile, Israel's parliament is set for a key vote to dissolve itself amid a crisis over military conscription. The move could trigger early elections, which polls suggest Prime Minister Netanyahu would lose. And in more news, Australia, Britain, Canada, New Zealand, and Norway yesterday imposed sanctions on a pair of Israeli cabinet ministers, accusing them of repeatedly inciting violence against Palestinians in the West Bank. Israel called the action outrageous. The U.S. and Russia have been working to improve their ties again. The war in Ukraine triggered the biggest confrontation between Moscow and the West since the Cold War. The Russian ambassador claims that improving ties is being slowed by anti-Russian lawmakers in the U.S. Congress. He added that the recovery of American-Russian relations is still a long way off. A Kremlin spokesperson also says that he doesn't expect the next talks to bring quick results. He says that's because there are a lot of blockages in bilateral relations. Ukraine reports bringing home the bodies of more than 1,200 soldiers killed in the war with Russia. Moscow, meanwhile, says Ukraine returned the bodies of 27 Russian soldiers. Kyiv and Moscow reached an agreement at their most recent talks last week. The two sides are scheduled to exchange hundreds of prisoners from various categories, as well as the bodies of soldiers who passed away. If completed, it would be the largest prisoner swap since the start of the war. Today marked the third round of exchanges. Russia says the two sides will begin exchanging seriously wounded prisoners of war tomorrow. Meanwhile, Austria is dealing with the aftermath of what appears to be the deadliest attack since the Second World War. Police are investigating yesterday's shooting as citizens observe 3 days of national mourning. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pasdar has the latest.
But all of Austria is shocked by the event of yesterday.
Austrian President Alexander Van der Bellen says the nation is still in shock on Wednesday, 1 day after a gunman killed 10 people. The perpetrator opened fire in his former high school in Graz, Austria's second largest city. The gunman's rampage ended after he committed suicide, but not before taking the lives of the 10 victims in the school. The city is now dealing with the aftermath of the shock.
We say that Graz is like a village. Every time you are out, you meet people you know. There's a high chance that, with such an attack, you know people who are affected.
He added that the high school also offers internships, which many aspiring teachers from Graz were completing. Now, Austrian police say they were able to immediately start the investigations right after the shooting took place. And according to police, 9 of the 10 victims were students between the ages of 15 and 17. And 1 female teacher also passed away. Now, police also say that the assailant left behind a suicide note and also a pipe bomb.
There was a suicide note both in digital form via video message and in handwritten form. We were also able to find and secure a pipe bomb.
The officer added that the pipe bomb was not functioning. The U.S. Embassy in Vienna took to Twitter on Wednesday, posting this picture with the caption, "The U.S. Embassy in Vienna's flag will fly at half-mast to remember the victims of the school shooting." Arian Pasdar, NTD News.
Coming up, President Trump is set to attend his first performance at the Kennedy Center. Big donors will get some special perks. That and more after the break.
Food. It fuels our bodies, nourishes our spirits, and brings us together. Because we all need nutritious food to thrive.
Food gives me energy and it also helps me focus.
But not everyone knows where their next meal is coming from. And 1 in 7 people in America face hunger. It's tougher than ever for too many of us. But the simple truth is, ending hunger is possible, and it starts with you. Call or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, to help families in your community facing hunger. Feeding America works from coast to coast with partner food banks, food pantries, and meal programs. Your monthly gift delivers food where it's needed most, puts fresh food on the table, and helps kids have healthy meals all year round, even when school is out.
You can see the difference with the kids when they're full. Food is everything.
Please call the number on your screen or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org. Give $19 a month. Your first gift can double in impact. And we'll send you this free canvas grocery bag as a reminder of how you're helping to end hunger for good.
When it comes down to it, it's about taking care of your family first and the loved ones that you need to provide for.
Food donations help me tremendously, and I'm very grateful for the food bank.
I have hope.
The simple truth is, ending hunger in America is possible. You can help make it happen. The need is urgent. Call or go online now to helpfeedingamerica.org, and your gift can double in impact.
When I arrived in the U.S. at 19, I struggled to find job opportunities without a high school diploma. My name is Ariel, and my entire life changed when I took a chance and I got my high school diploma at age 22. Everything I have, my education, my career, my marriage, I owe to the Adult Literacy Center and my teachers. They were with me every step of the way, helping with my English and math, making sure I pushed through all the challenges.
So Ariel, we made this here just for you. It has notes from other people that are here. Your achievement has set an example for so many students. Most importantly, your daughter.
Education was the key that unlocked all my opportunities.
When you graduate, they graduate. Visit finishyourdiploma.org to find free and supportive adult education centers near you.
Former movie mogul Harvey Weinstein was convicted today on one of the top charges in his sex crimes retrial. The ex-Hollywood producer was acquitted of another. Weinstein's initial conviction 5 years ago seemed to mark the end for one of the film industry's most powerful men. The guilty verdict was a pivotal moment for the Me Too movement, but it was overturned last year. The retrial is taking place at the same Manhattan courthouse. Today, the jury convicted the former studio boss of forcibly subjecting someone to a criminal sex act in 2006. Jurors also acquitted Weinstein of another criminal sex act charge from that year. The jury is deliberating on a third charge that he raped another woman in 2013. President Trump will attend Les Miserables tonight, his first show at the Kennedy Center. The performance comes months after the president orchestrated a shakeup of the institution's leadership. Trump pushed out its former chairman, fired its longtime president, and pledged to overhaul the center. The Kennedy Center depends on revenue from tickets and subscriptions, as well as donations to operate. First Lady Melania Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance will also attend tonight's performance. Trump will sit in the presidential box overlooking center stage in the 2,300-seat theater. Donors who pay $100,000 to $2 million will get to attend a reception before the show and receive a photo with the president. Coming up, a new report warns that tablets and e-learning devices may be harming more than helping children in school. Stay with us.
Imagine a coffee that cares for your health. Expertly fermented with a 50-enzyme complex to enhance flavor and remove bitterness. Small batch roasted to a decadent medium dark, resulting in a brew that is gentle on digestion, low acid, and up to 90% less caffeine than regular coffee. Try America's first enzyme fermented coffee today.
All throughout your home, appliances and systems just wait for the worst time to break down and leave you with expensive repairs. Unless you have a plan from Choice Home Warranty.
All home appliances and systems have a breakdown clock, and when it expires, it will cost hundreds and potentially even thousands of dollars to fix or replace. That's why every homeowner should have a plan with Choice Home Warranty, like I do. For a low monthly fee, a Choice Home Warranty plan will cover your heating, air conditioning, plumbing, appliances, and more. Don't let an unexpected repair wreck your budget. With Choice Home Warranty, that covered repair is fixed or replaced for you.
Choice Home Warranty has been a great company to work with, and they've taken care of us. I would suggest anybody who lives in a home not to be in a home without them.
Avoid the ticking clock of home appliances and systems breaking down with a plan from Choice Home Warranty. Call now to get your first month free. Call in the next 10 minutes and we'll give you $120 off your first year of coverage. That's $200 in total savings.
With a nationwide network of over 25,000 technicians, I don't worry about how my next breakdown will be handled. With a click of a button, my claim is filed, and Choice Home Warranty starts the clock. They do the legwork, hiring the right technician and handling the cost of covered repairs and replacements. And check this out. For a limited time, you can get 1 month of coverage free. Did you hear me? Free. You can't beat that deal with a sledgehammer. But hurry, this offer is ticking away. Once the clock hits 0, poof, it's gone.
Don't fear the breakdown clock. Get a plan from Choice Home Warranty and get round-the-clock money-saving protection you can count on. Call in the next 10 minutes and we'll give you $120 off your first year of coverage, plus get your first month free. This offer won't...